Hey all, here are OS Reviews. Today we're taking a quick look at a budget smartwatch that goes by BH588A, and despite the generic name, this one here is interesting because, first of all, it's rare to find a true round display smartwatch that sells for around $30. I believe this is made in the same factory as many of the Haylou smartwatches, which is an ecosystem brand of Xiaomi, such as the original Haylou Solar, or perhaps a more accurate comparison would be the newer Haylou RT2 or LS10 that shares even closer resemblance in terms of the 2.5D curves of the round display, or even the IMILAB KW66. Again, these are all essentially made from the same factory, so it's no surprise that they have super similar DNA in terms of the software and the hardware. Really, aside from this, you'll get a magnetic pogo charging contact cable. It takes about an hour and a half to fully charge, and then the watch itself can last for around 10 to 12 days before you need to charge it again. So pretty good battery life, but it's actually the norm when it comes to these lower cost smartwatches that runs on a much lighter version of the OS. Finally, there is just a quick user guide. So taking a closer look at the design of the smartwatch first, I have to say they've done a pretty good job, just like the Haylou RT2 and the LS10 that we've seen from the past. It is feeling much more expensive than the price would imply, especially the tempered glass screen they've used here is truly 2.5D, so it slightly curves off at the edges, as you can see there, just makes it feel even more comfortable as you're swiping along. It's usually a feature that we find on more expensive smartwatches and great to find here, and also the bezel sizes really isn't bad for a budget smartwatch like this. If we choose a slightly different interface, you can see it a bit more clearly. It does look the part of being a much more expensive smartwatch, especially on a cursory glance, I have to say, and there even is this very subtle kind of blue accent going on to some of the bezels as it's shining across the light. It actually reminds me a lot of the much more expensive Zepp E smartwatch, which is also one of my favorites, compared to some of the other options, including the also solid WearPi HW21 that we saw from last year. Another very good budget smartwatch with a round display, but you can see here how this one has a completely flat screen and it has this more of a bezeled look on the edges there that's raised above versus something like this, which I personally feel like is a little bit more clean. As a budget smartwatch, the frame here is still constructed out of polycarbonate plastic, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It feels rather durable and it's similar materials to what we saw on the very popular Amazfit Bip series a few years back. And we have the contacts here for SpO2, so it does measure your blood oxygen level in addition to the optical heart rate sensor and the charging contacts. The watch straps, of course, are removable, and the rubber band here also feels to be pretty good quality. By default, it's breathable again, it's water resistant. Specifically, the IP rating though is 68, so it will be okay to use in the rain if you're doing a light shower, but it's not as advised to take this diving or if you're going for longer or deeper swims. So it's one area where they were able to cut costs a little bit more compared to some of the other watches that might have a 5 ATM. Display here measures 1.28 inches diagonally. It is an IPS LCD panel, but overall I think it looks quite good for the price. We'll take a closer look, of course, in a moment, but do note that it isn't an OLED screen, which is expected at this price. There are 12 basic sports or activities that you're able to track on here in terms of calories and distance. It can also show you some quick status updates, things like weather, and we'll also check out those features next. However, this watch also doesn't have built-in GPS, but like I said, that would be expected at this price and pretty much mirrors the same features that we saw on the aforementioned Haylou smartwatches. Taking a closer look at the user interface, it's also surprisingly, I think, pretty polished for this low price point, and you can see that swipes are actually quite responsive, so we can swipe down here to access the quick tray of shortcuts, including things like dimming the display, making it brighter or dimmer as we please. You can also jump into a do not disturb mode, so if you are paired via Bluetooth 5.0 to your smartphone, it will prevent notifications and vibrations from waking you during the night, for instance, or if you're in a meeting. And you can also swipe up to access the full list of all the applications in this carousel view. Again, looks quite good. We can also then swipe over to the left and the right to go through the individual pages and widgets one by one. So the first panel here will give us access to a quick glance of our steps, calories, and distance walked for the day. Otherwise, I can check out my heart rate, and for this you do have a little bit more detail. By swiping up, you can take a look at how that has fluctuated during the past few hours that you've been wearing it, the high versus the low for the day, and you can set it up to do continuous heart rate measurement. Optical sensors have been getting quite good now, even on budget watches like this. It still is within a close enough range of what I found when comparing it with a Amazfit and more expensive Apple Watches, so not too far off there, which is good. It usually just takes a few seconds to get a measurement, and there is also the aforementioned blood oxygen SpO2 measurement, which does need to be triggered manually. So this function, you can't use it to automatically track, but rather you have to tap to start, and then it takes about 15 seconds or so. One more type over will take you into your quick status of sleep. This will reset during the evening times. It will give you a snapshot of how many hours you've spent in light versus deep sleep, and sleep tracking accuracy on budget smartwatches has always been an area that's lagged a little bit more behind the best and most premium smartwatches. I say that because this tracks sleep during night hours perfectly fine, but like many others in the same price category, if you're trying to take a nap during the day, for example at noon, it won't really track that. Once over again to take a look at your weather condition, and also shows you 3 more days ahead, as well as the highs and lows for the day. Now, before we take a look at some of the more advanced settings, I can also change the watch face here just by long holding for 3 seconds. The memory of the watch, though, is a little bit more limited than the most premium models out there, in the sense that I can only hold up to 3 watch faces on the device at once, and if you switch to a new watch face, it will push out whatever is located on the final option here. So you can override these by customizing and downloading more, but it will only hold 3 at one time. So here's one of the default ones that it came with, the digital crown, and then we also saw kind of the third one here with analog was one that I customized using the companion app. The pixel density of the display, I would say maybe it's not quite as good as some of the most flagship grade smartwatches, but still is looking quite good in terms of the colors at the very least, and for the most part there's no real issues as far as making things out. Looks quite colorful. Brightness is also sufficient, maybe not quite as glaringly bright as some AMOLED or OLED screens, but even under some moderate lighting you can see that it still remains visible, which is good. And as a whole, not too big of an issue. There is no always on display mode because, like I said, it is just an IPS LCD panel, but overall I think it still works really well enough, nicely laminated and easy to control. Now again, some of these other custom apps we can just take a quick look at, including access to the aforementioned 12 sports modes. It gives you a nice variety between jogging, walking, cycling, yoga, running, gymnastics even, basketball, football, and rowing. So a good list. However, again, there is no built-in GPS, but you can rely on your phone's GPS and connect to that as you are tracking your sport and record that as a separate session for you to then review later on. Check out some additional details that you can then sync over to your phone to learn more about. Now, otherwise, we can also take a look at additional settings such as any notifications. So this will display any messages that you have from your phone, social media that is synced over using Bluetooth. You can't reply to messages like most other budget smartwatches, and there is no built-in microphone either for things like phone calls, but again, expected and mirrors what we saw on the Haylou smartwatches. Finally, there is also a basic kind of remote control for music. Again, if you're connected by Bluetooth, you can use this to control and skip tracks to whatever is playing back from your phone, which is pretty neat. Some more advanced settings also allow you to do a quick countdown timer, stopwatch, as well as being able to find your phone. Once you are paired, it will then vibrate the phone. And again, just breathing or meditation training like we saw from before will allow you to relax and inhale, exhale with the visualizations that you see here on the watch. So taking a look at the companion app, which is called HiFit, overall you can see that it's relatively simple, but it will track and record your sessions, things like steps. You can tap on to take a look at more details of points in time when you were more active, as well as change things like your target for how many steps you want to hit for the day, as well as check out more details like the specific heart rate fluctuations. Although this particular model, at least the software at the moment, can't really send you intelligent notifications, say if you've exceeded a certain heart rate beat, Now, tapping on the watch itself, we can also take a look at some additional dials. Again, these ones have all been ones we've seen previously on many of the other Amazfit watches, and they've basically just also brought those over. So I like this one as well because it tells us our weather, shows a little bit more details at a glance, but again, this would replace the existing third watch face that we have on board. So some other ones that we can see here are a little bit more digital, analog, and playful. This one here, the astronaut, is also a animated one that will kind of spin around. They're all pretty colorful and attractive, I have to say. And again, the custom here allowing you to select your own background photo. Other things that we can set include turning off the auto heart rate sensor, but you can't really change the frequency of the measurements, such as if you want to take one every 30 minutes, every hour, this seems to be done automatically, and right now it's about 5 to 10 minutes between each measurement. You can also take a look at any notifications you want to pass through, set up alarms to wake you up in the morning, sedentary reminders so that it will vibrate to tell you to move if you've been sitting for more than 30 minutes, the gesture of flicking your wrist to wake up the screen automatically, as well as the timeout of the display after 5 seconds or longer. This can also be customized. And finally, the ability for you to change between 12 and 24-hour formats. Now, in terms of the weather, like I said, you can only use degrees Celsius for some reason, so I'm not able to really change this to Fahrenheit. So there are a few limitations to the software, which I feel like could be pretty easy for them to just give you a little bit more granular control, give you a little bit more intelligent recommendations, and that would make it even more of a steal. If all you need is a watch that will get you some basic activity tracking, overall very good battery life, again a very attractive design, it shows that there has been continued refinement and additional improvements even on these low-cost budget smartwatches here in 2022. You can check out more details if you're interested in the links down below, but for now that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That's been the very affordable BH588A round smartwatch.